Well, welcome back to another Coffee and a Chat. And oh, yes, you can even see the coffee in there because I'm just getting started on this cup, but it's not my first. And it's still morning. But I've got a Christmas cup out today that I'm drinking out of, which all that means is somebody needs to do dishes. Wonder who that'll be. I hope you guys are doing well. Spring is trying to be sprung here, but I don't know. I think they said we got a couple more days of winter coming ahead too, so we're going to go back cold, but it's supposed to reach maybe even 72 today. Wouldn't that be something? Depending on which weather guy you're listening to. I'm listening to the one that says it should be 72. I like that better than 69. I've been kind of cold lately. When you get older, I think it must, like your internal heater doesn't always work right. If I get a chill, I have a terrible time trying to get warmed up. So I'm looking forward to it being, I don't know that it's going to be sunny, but being at least warmer today. So anyway, today I want to tell you a story that I was thinking about here. I think it was the last video where I talked about the scripture that says, that when I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. When I was hungry, you fed me. And when I was naked, you clothed me. And the disciples say to Jesus, when did we ever see you thirsty, hungry, or naked? And he said, whenever you did that for someone else, you did it for me. And so it sparked a memory of a woman that I used to know named Lou. And how she, I think, went to some great extremes to be that person. So anyway, this was back late 70s, early 80s, and we lived in a very, very tiny little town. I mean, a tiny little town. There was no grocery store in this town. There was one main road that went through the town. No traffic lights or anything like that. And there was no grocery store, but at that time there was, I think it was a lumber store. I've been trying to remember. And in the summer, when the farmers, because there was farms all around this whole little tiny town, it was a farming community. And so in the summer, the farmers would come into this place. They opened up their parking lot and set up tables, and the farmers would bring fresh produce out of their fields. And then the people at this lumber store, because I think that's what it was, they would sell the fresh produce. And so we could go down, in the morning and get stuff fresh out of the fields. And so that was a real treat. And a lot of people in town did that. Now, I don't know that this town is still the tiny little thing. I know that they do have a grocery store and a bunch of other things now, and they didn't even have a gas station back then. You had to drive to another town to get gas. And so, but the area's grown up so much like other places, and all the other towns around there, and there was a city nearby. They've all gotten so bad, or so big. I guess I should say big, not bad. Yeah. I just like the country, and the country's disappearing. Anyway, everything has gotten so big that it kind of starts growing into each other, and you don't always know technically which town you're in as you're going down the street because it'll change. So anyway, this was a tiny little town all by itself at this time, and so that was the only groceries we could get. Otherwise, we had to drive to the city to get groceries. There was no gas station. There was a little medical clinic, but it didn't even have a doctor. They had a paramedic that ran the clinic, and he worked under a doctor. And then there was a tiny little pharmacy next door to that, and that was it. There was a little restaurant that came and went depending on how well they did, and it was probably shut down more than it was open. And there was a bar in town. And probably like 12, 20 churches. I don't know. Lots and lots of churches. But that's the only thing they had a lot of. In fact, all 12 grades were in one school. They did build a high school eventually and move the 9th through 12th grade out into the high school. But they still stayed. I mean, the last time I lived there, it was still 1st through 8th grade was still in one place. So it was a very, very small town. Everybody knew everybody. And so we lived out there, and we lived in a little trailer, and a very little trailer, and we had a little girl, and I was pregnant again, and we knew we couldn't figure out where in this little trailer were we even going to put a bassinet for the baby. So we needed to upgrade. And so across the field where we were living was a little farmhouse, and that field was owned by this woman and her kids and stuff. And so she had moved out of her little farmhouse that had been there forever. In fact, her husband had built it. It had been a little one-room cabin, and then they just kept adding rooms onto it. Like, you have another kid, you add another room, need a little more space. Finally, we need some plumbing, add a bathroom. And so it was one of those transition houses. It was really kind of cute. And anyway, Lou was like, you know what, I'm moving out of the farmhouse. Do you want to move into it? And she rented it to us really reasonable. In fact, I think we paid less money for that little farmhouse than we were paying for which was much bigger than the little trailer. And I think we paid less money for that each month than what we were paying for our trailer. So anyway, so we made the move. Now, in this town, everybody knew everybody. And because I don't even remember what the population was, but it was very small. And so she had said, oh, I do need to tell you one thing, when we were moving in. And I go, what's that? She goes, you're going to want to lock the house up at night, really nice and tight. And I was like, what? Because a lot of people, we never locked our doors out there. We all knew each other, so if somebody ripped you off, you knew who it was that was ripping you off, and you'd take care of it. So I was like, why? What's wrong? And she goes, well, one of my kids is an alcoholic. Well, we all knew that. He was the alcoholic. On the Andy Griffith show, there was Otis, that was the town drunk that was always going down and locking himself up in the jail at night because he had had too much to drink. Well, her son was kind of Otis of the town. So everybody knew she had this son that had a really serious drinking problem. And so she said, when he first got old enough to start going up to the bar, and, she goes, he could always find his way home, and, and he'd crawl into the house and lay down on the couch or the floor or wherever he landed and sleep it off, and, until morning. And she goes, and then I'd always cook him a good breakfast and get him a cup of coffee and try and get him pulled together so he could go to work or whatever. Well, she said in time, some of the other guys that were drinking too much, they just started following him home. And so she goes, after a while, I'd wake up and, my living room floor, which wasn't very big, but she goes, it would just be solid, guys passed out. And so I'd just go in there and, and go out and get some eggs from the chickens and come in and start cooking up a breakfast and making the coffee. And they'd wake up when they smelled that. And then I'd feed them all breakfast and give them a good cup of coffee and made sure they were super sober and send them on home. So she goes, I've been doing that for probably more than 40 years. And I was like, oh my goodness. She goes, so they still show up. And so if you don't lock the doors, when you get up in the morning, there's going to be some men in here passed out. And I don't know if you want to do that. Well, here I am. I've got a 2-year-old, and I'm pregnant with another one on the way. And yeah, I wasn't really sure I wanted that coming into my house. And I was like, oh my goodness, Lou, I didn't know you were doing that. And she goes, yeah, I've done it for years and stuff. So she was like, so lock the doors. And I'm like, okay, we'll lock the doors. So probably for the first month that we were living there, my husband, he'd sleep through anything. My first husband, well, Marvin does too. Men just can sleep through things. But I would wake up with guys, trying to get in the door and rapping on the windows, going, Lou, let me in, and I'd be out there, Lou doesn't live here anymore. And so after a while, they finally figured it out and came up with a new plan. I don't know where they all went after that. But, what Lou did, a lot of people had their feelings about Lou. Some people felt she was just enabling them, and she's like, well, they're going to do what they're going to do, and at least, they can get safely to my home, and I can make sure they've got some good food in, because that may be the only decent meal they have for the day. And what she did was out of love. She didn't like her son being an alcoholic. She did not like that at all. And she would have done anything to change it. In fact, she ended up having to bury that son. And, I remember the day that, we had his services, and it was the alcoholism. It was a result of that ended up with him coming to the end of his life. And in fact, she buried at least 2 of her 3 children before she passed away. I think the other one did outlive her, but she was an amazing woman, a strong woman. She really loved the Lord, and for her, that was her ministry, was to the town drunks. And not everybody's cut out to do that, but that was what her thing was. That was what God gave her. And when she ministered to those men, because they all got their earful of Jesus too, she would be singing hymns and then be talking to them about Jesus, as she was serving them breakfast. So they all knew, Lou loves Jesus, and, and we're going to hear that. And they loved her for it. But she left her mark in that town as the only person that really cared about the drunks that most of them didn't want to deal with. And so much so that she left her door open every night so that they would have a safe place to go and would get a good meal in the morning and a little sermon to start them on their day. And so regardless of how, a person may feel about was she enabling or whatever, she had a really good heart and an amazing heart. She was another woman that I am so thankful that I got to know, because where I was in life at that point, she was so willing to do so much more for people than I was. I was way too fearful to do the things she did, because she started this, when her husband was living, but then when her husband passed away, she kept on, and she never worried about it. That was her ministry. And, until she had to move out of that house, because she had gotten so old that she needed something that was a little more conducive for her at her age. And eventually that old farmhouse got tore down, and they put a different home there, and she moved back on because they fixed it up. And I think one of her granddaughters or so was living with her to help take care of her, but so she could come back home again. And that made her really happy. And I remember going and visiting her out there in her new home, and how thrilled she was with it and all. But, she had a heart for the Lord. That's why she did what she did. She loved the men that most of the town didn't want to deal with, because God loved them. And she knew, even though she didn't drink and that wasn't her thing, but she knew that what is in one person is in another. And we're all capable of anything. It just kind of depends on what's going to bring it out. And she knew she could have been a drunk. She wasn't, but she could have been. She wasn't any better than these men. And she would sit and talk to them and listen to their stories and stuff. And most of them could tell their stories, and she knew they were drunks because of some trauma that they had been through that they could not deal with. And they used the alcohol to try to numb the pain they were in. And she was like, but I know that Jesus is the answer to that. You don't need to numb that pain, because that's only temporary, and then it's going to come back even worse. And, at least these guys quit driving. When she opened her home and they knew that they were welcome to walk into her house and sleep it off, then they left their vehicles at the bar, and they weren't driving anymore. She got a lot of drunks off the road. And because I'll tell you, for such a small town, the percentage of people that were drunks was probably pretty significant, because there must have been 20 men or more that she housed on a regular basis when they would go to town to be drinking. So, and I know some of them were coming off the farms and stuff, but still, for such a little town, it seemed like we had a lot of town drunks. Now, her son was the biggest town drunk, He made the biggest spectacle of himself, but loved him dearly. And when he was sober, he was one of the smartest people I had ever met in my life. He was a genius. And for him to, it used to break my heart that he was in so much emotional pain that he got into this position, because he could have done so many great things with his life, and he just didn't. The alcohol got in the way. So, like I said, regardless of how you feel about all those things, the one thing is that Lou loved the Lord so much that she could show this love and compassion and minister to these men with what she had. Now, was she specially educated? Had she been to seminary? Was she trained as a substance abuse counselor or anything? No. She was just a farmer's wife. That's all she had ever really been. And she'd just been a mom that raised her kids. I don't even know if she went all the way through high school. I don't know. But she had a heart for the Lord. And I want to encourage you in this too, that when you're a follower of Jesus, His Holy Spirit dwells in us, okay? And so whether I'm this special person that's had all this special training and all, you know what? The best people to be used of God are the ones that simply let the Lord work through us from our heart. That's where we do our best. And God has some way that He wants to use you in somebody else's life. He wants to use you to make a difference. You may not be capable, but Jesus in you is. So as we see time marching on and things getting more and more difficult, and the scriptures about what happens in the very last days happening right before our eyes more and more, I think it's becoming even more crucial for us to just be in tune with the Lord and saying, how do you want to use me? Because there is something that He wants to do in you and through you. All you've got to do is be an open and willing vessel for Him to flow through. That's all. He'll do the rest. So I want to encourage you today. Maybe you're a Lou and there's a group of people that you have compassion for, and you can somehow show that compassion. Maybe you maybe you've got the finances that you can contribute to help some of the programs and things that are trying to help out the people that are hurting. Maybe you can pay somebody's electric bill right now. Maybe you can buy groceries for a neighbor that needs help. Maybe you can, I don't know, but I know there's something. And even if it's just that you can go to the grocery store and smile at somebody who's having a bad day and turn that day around for them. Maybe you're a little grandma that has a corner that you can go sit in and pray for people every day. It's what I do. And that may seem small to some people, but I know it's not. It's huge. I was talking to a friend of mine. Well, she's more than a friend. She's like a sister to me. And God's really been laying it on her heart to be praying for me. And there was some things that, I've been going through that I really needed prayer. And, as we were talking, I was like, what I've realized, I had a great grandmother that from the day I was born, she prayed for me every day until the day she died. And I was 8 years old when she died. She always prayed for me. In fact, her testimony of that is what really moved my heart as an 8-year-old to begin a prayer ministry for my family, because she was like, who's going to pray for you guys now? I'm going home to be with Jesus. And I just want you to see, and I've told this story before, how my great-grandfather held up her Bible and showed us that all our names, when we were born, she wrote our name in her Bible. And every day she prayed for every single one of us. And she's like, I have done it from the day you were born. Now I'm going home. Okay? And she did within a couple of days. But she goes, now I'm going home. And I just, who's going to pray now? And as an 8-year-old, I was like, I'm going to pray. And I'm sure a lot of people were like, oh, what a cute little kid, or whatever. But that really struck me as an 8-year-old. So at the age of 8, I started being a prayer warrior for my family, and then that expanded on into friends and whoever the Lord placed on my heart. And and I still keep a list. It's not in my Bible because that list is always changing and growing and everything, and so my Bible could not hold it. And so I have notebooks that that are my prayer journals, and I write things down. And I have for other reasons, because 40 is the number of birthing, and the Lord laid it on my heart to always pray for a minimum of 40 days, because there's some things that, you're just going to pray for this person for a little while, through this situation they're in. And even when the circumstances would get worked out and maybe 40 days wasn't up, I still would pray for them. And so, I tell you guys, if you need prayer, put it in the comments and ask me to pray for you, or send me an email, or write me a letter, because my P.O. box and my email address are in the description of this video. And then I will pray for you for a minimum of 40 days. Now, at the end of that 40 days, there's one young man who asked me a long time ago to pray for him off this channel. I don't personally know him. I just, know him from this channel. And he has stayed in my prayer journal, because when I get to the end of 40 days, God always says, go another 40. So I go another 40, get to the end of that, and God goes, go another 40. So this young man, I don't know, he may be in there until the day I die. I don't know. But I know it is a very real and important ministry that God has given me. But when I was talking to my friend, I go, my great grandma's gone. And she used to pray for me every day. My mother prayed for me all the time. She's gone. So I don't have her to pray for me. My dad prayed for me. He's gone. And, I said, what I'm realizing is the older generations that have been praying for me since I was a child, and people that I knew that prayed for me all the time, that, they didn't, because, a lot of times we'll say, oh, I'm praying for you. And we might pray once, or, a spattering. But that person who's consistently praying for me every day, they've gone home. They're all home with the Lord. I'm the next generation now. I'm the old generation. I have one living immediate relative. I have an aunt that is still living. And I know, and she's up there. When she's gone, that's it. Then it's me. I remember at my grandfather's funeral, standing next to my uncle, and my grandfather was the last to go of that generation. And my uncle had said, Angie, you know what this means? And I'm like, I had no idea what he's talking about. He goes, this means that I'm the next generation. Me, your mom, your aunt, the three of us, we're the next generation in this family. We're now the old generation. We're the old ones. We're, the supposed to be the wise ones and all. And it was just like really hitting him. And, and I was like, okay, and I didn't quite get it. Now he, interestingly enough, their youngest sister was quite a bit years. She was only 15 years older than me. She was quite a bit younger than my mom and my uncle. She passed away first. Then my uncle, who was the oldest, he passed away. And then my mom was the last one to pass away. And so on that side of the family, I'm the next generation, the old generation, the oldest. And we're not even all here. And, of my cousins and my brothers and all, a lot of them have passed away already. Some of them before even my mom had passed away. So, that hits me more. And I know on my dad's side that when this aunt goes, I'm it. That will be it. I have nobody older, and I know my aunt prays for me, but it is a weird feeling. And Marvin and I were talking about it, because he's got one aunt left, and then it's him and his brothers and his sister. They're the next, the oldest generation then, and we were talking about how that is a weird feeling, that you're not a kid anymore, and you don't have those elders that you can go to anymore that are supposed to carry the wisdom and everything. Now it's you. I don't think I'm ready for it. I don't think I'm smart enough or wise enough, and it is a strange feeling. So yeah, interesting thing. So I was telling her, who's going to pray for me? And because she was like, man, God keeps laying you on my heart. And I go, maybe it's because I need somebody to be praying for me. And I think that really hit her like, okay, this is an important assignment and I'm going to meet up to it. And because I know I'm doing that, like all my nieces and nephews, all my children, all my grandchildren, all my great-grandchildren, my living aunt that's still alive, they are all on, my cousins. I've got my family members, even from my first husband, even though I'm not part of that family anymore. And when he divorced me, I guess they divorced me too. But, they remained in my prayer journal, because once you're my family, you're always my family. And so I know that I'm praying for other people like that, like people prayed for me. But is there somebody praying for me? We all need it. We all need somebody. And so I feel like the Lord is maybe raising up this adopted sister of mine now to be that person for me. So that's pretty cool. All right, so that's what I wanted to share with you today, is that, whatever, I'm not telling you to open your house and let all the drunks come in and sleep there at night and then give them breakfast in the morning. I'm not telling you to do what Lou did. I'm not sure that, it's a real different world now than it was when she was doing that. But I do want to encourage you, if you're a follower of Jesus, to let him show you. If you don't see what your spiritual purpose is or what your ministry is, because there is something for you, let him show you and let him birth that out of you. It'll change your life. And, and just the importance of praying for each other, that is a powerful thing. It's not small. All right. With that, I'm going to finish this cup of coffee it's still warm. It's still warm, but I don't know for how much longer. All right. I love you guys, and I'll talk to you again real soon.